Today's video is about instance, which is a new pseudoscope type. Now you might be wondering what a pseudoscope type is, and it's a great question, but I think you're getting ahead of yourself. Let's start off by learning what it does. Take every instance air. Drowse. So in its most basic form, you target something and you prefix it with every instance, and that will take every instance of that thing, right? So I said every instance air, and that selected everywhere in the document that I see the token air, which is that token with 3 characters at the beginning. That's the most basic usage. Another fairly common use case is curse undo. Take 3 instances air. Drowse. So in that case, it just takes the next 3 instances starting from the given token. That's going to be probably 90 to 95% of your use cases, especially when you're getting started. And that in and of itself is quite useful. Now, keep in mind, like any other cursorless scope or target, there's a lot of actions, right? So take is oftentimes not what you're going to use. So for example, if you wanted to change every instance, you could do that. Curse undo. Change every instance air. Word hello. Drowse. So as you can see, I've basically just changed every instance in the document. Now that we've covered the basics, let's see what we can do that's a bit more advanced. Nope. Drowse. Okay, so one thing that you can do that's a bit more advanced is you can apply instance you can either put things after or before instance, just because in Cursorless everything is a chain. So let's take a look at putting something before instance, right? So what that's going to do is it's going to give us the instances and then somehow modify those ranges. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so let's say that now what I want to do is I want to, in all of those places where I see AAABBB, that's a camel case token, I want to change that first word. Okay, I want to change that AAA everywhere I see that token AABBB. So to do that, I would say change first word every instance bat. Drowse. And as you can see, it's found all the instances of AABBB and then applied first word to that. So now I can just drum thrice, drowse, and change that. Okay, that's probably that's another use case which is probably going to be fairly common. Is an easy way to just change part of some token that you have everywhere. So that's one way. Now we can chain on behind instance. Let's have a look at chaining after instance, right? So what this is going to do is instead of looking at instances of just a simple token, it's going to be instances of something more complex. In this case, let's say I want to target every instances of the tokens AAA space BBB, right? I want those 2 tokens. Well, to select those, I could use the 2 tokens modifier. So let's quickly see that. Take 2 tokens air. Curse undo. Drowse. Okay. So now let's say I want to target all the instances of those 2 tokens in the document. Take every instance 2 tokens air. Drowse. And as you can see, now it's looking for instances of that in the document. So you can see now we can chain before it, right? And basically say, okay, I want the first word of all the instances of something, or I can chain afterwards and I can say, give me all the instances of this more complex object, like 2 tokens or like 3 tokens or even a range. So take every instance crosshair past cap. Drowse. So as you can see, I gave it a range and now it's looking for all instances of that range. Okay, so that pretty much covers the different ways in which I can chain those things. And remember, all of these I can use n instances, I can 2 instances, 3 instances, 4 instances, or I can say every instance. And you can actually use the full grammar of that we support around scopes, right? So for instance, so to speak, I could say curse undo, take last instance bat, drowse. And that will pick the last instance in the document, right? Or I can say take first two instances bat, and that's going to be the first two in the document, etc. So that full grammar is available to you. That's most of the common use cases. So let's now talk a bit about why it's called a pseudoscope. Okay, so normal scopes, they start from a mark, right? So if I say like line air, that's the line containing air, or like line is just the line containing my cursor, right? North. Take line air, curse undo. North. Take line, curse undo. Drowse. Right? But instance behaves a little bit differently because it not only looks at the thing after it in order to figure out where to start, right? Like what to expand, but it also uses it to figure out what it's even looking for, right? So for example, when I say two instances air, right? It's looking for two instances starting from air, and it's looking for instances of air. So it's a pseudoscope because it's kind of using its input in two ways, so it doesn't quite fit into the normal scope ballpark. And so because of that, we need some trickery in order, so we have some experimental things we can do if you want it to behave a bit differently. Because like it could be, so for example, I haven't mentioned this, but you can say next instance, right? Take next instance air, drowse, right? So that's going to be the next instance starting from air, right? So it's looking for air and it's starting from air. That might not be what you want, right? You might want to start from your cursor. In addition, what if I don't want to do every instance in the document? What if I want every instance in the first two lines of the document, right? Or every instance of the line containing my cursor. So normally with every, you could just chain, right? So I could just say like every line block, every line func, right? But the problem is if I say like every instance air func, it doesn't work because instance eats everything after it, right? When I say every instance 2 tokens air, it eats 2 tokens air. It'll eat everything, right? And to figure out what instances it's looking for and then go from there, right? So we need some side channel in order to say where to look or where to start looking, okay? Might be a bit abstract. Let's make that concrete, okay? So let's do probably the most useful example is going to be, let's say I want all the instances of bat, of the token bat, in the first 2 lines, right? So in order to do this, you have to use this new experimental thing we have called from, okay? From is an experimental action. You need to enable it by looking in your CSVs. There's an experimental folder, experimental actions, delete the dash at the beginning. That's documented. Once you've done that, you'll now have an action called from. And what that does is it sets up what's called the instance reference mark. And so what that does is it says, okay, what would be the input to the instance chain? What should be the input? So it's like, where am I looking? Where am I starting from, etc. Okay, so enough blabbering. Let's take all the instances of bat in the first 2 lines. From first 2 lines, take every instance bat. Drowse. So what you do is you just say from, and then wherever you want to narrow the range to, and then you just do the normal command. Take every instance, chuck every instance, whatever, right? I should really stop using take so much because it's not very cursorless of me. But chuck might be more useful, right? I could say from first 2 lines, chuck every instance bat, and that would just delete them. Or from first 2 lines, round wrap every instance bat, right? Okay, so that's probably the most useful use of instance, but there's some cool stuff you can do with multiple cursors, right? So, for example, if I want to, like, let's say I had pre-crosshair and air. Nope. Undo that. Pre-crosshair and air. Drowse. Okay, so let's say I wanted to select the next instance of bat from both of these cursors. Easy enough. From this, take next instance bat. Drowse. So as you can see, it starts from my cursors, and then for each one of them, takes the next instance of those, right? I could say next 2 instances, whatever, right? If I have multiple cursors, now I could say like, from line, take every instance bat. From line, take every instance bat. Drowse. And you can see it looks at the lines containing my cursors and gives me all the instances of bad there. So that's from, and then there's all sorts of crazy stuff you can do. Because for example, let's say I wanted to take like the cap token and bring it after every instance of air. I could do that. Bring cap after every instance air. Drowse. So as you can see, it just put that cap token after all the places it found air, right? So it's like a fully functional scope type. So there's all kinds of crazy stuff that you can do with it. That's probably covers most everything you'd want to know. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or, I should have mentioned probably at the very beginning, you got to update your Cursorless Talon files if you want to use this thing. If your Talon files are more than a week older than this video, because it was released about a week ago as of this recording. So yeah, have fun using it. I've been having a blast with it already. Super fun, super useful. Thanks for watching and happy coding. Record stop.